Hello everybody, welcome to FranchiseHelp.com. I'm Matt Wilson and I'm here with Joel Newman from Amazing Spaces Storage Centers. We want to talk about, it's really definitely a hot industry right now where you can go get a piece of property and put up a beautiful, beautiful storage center where people can come, keep their stuff, but it also looks nice, and it also has a lot of amenities. It's a high-end space. So Joel's going to tell us a little bit more about the franchise opportunity. We're going to kind of dig into what it's like to be a franchisee and go over some things in depth here. Joel, thanks for coming on today.
Matt, thanks for having me. I look forward to this.
No problem. So I want to start right off in asking you, why is storage so hot? I mean, it's rental property. It's a big rental game. Is that correct?
Absolutely. There's several reasons why storage is attractive. First off, we're a very stable industry. Low failure rates, especially compared to other real estate sectors, office, retail, multifamily. Our failure rates are much lower. We have a business that requires limited staffing. Typical property, we're only looking at needing 2 to 3 employees, and it's a semi-passive investment. Our franchisees don't need to leave their day jobs. There's involvement, but each property has a full-time manager. So it's more of an oversight role. You're investing in real estate, of course, but along with investing in real estate, you have a business that generates very nice cash flow. There's a lot of advantages to this.
Okay, so where do most of your franchisees come from? Who's that person that you want to walk in your door and say, hey, this could be my business?
Sure. Well, first off, a little bit about our Amazing Spaces. We're based out of Houston. We've been doing self-storage for over a decade now. We have 3 of our own properties that have done very well. And a couple years ago, just based on receiving several winning Facility of the Year award in 2002, we decided that we wanted to grow through franchising. Really, there's no ideal candidate. First, you need to be financially qualified, which realistically means that you can invest $1.5 million, either individually or with partners. But it needs to be someone that has a responsible background, has the capital, and really with the desire to do it. We're not looking for a specific type of background, and it's usually a professional that's maybe looking to do this as a second business, or maybe even as a retirement vehicle.
Okay, so what really interested me in Amazing Spaces is that, I mean, these things look like log cabins that you'd see in Vermont, or on a cattle ranch you'd drive up, and they have these amazing buildings. Why wouldn't you just put up those regular aluminum storage centers, and you're making rental income like that? Can you really charge that much more? I want to know, is it worth it to put up these beautiful buildings?
Sure. I mean, you're somewhat referring to is really low-end storage. And there's a market for that. Just like there's a market for budget hotels and there's a market for upscale hotels. Our niche in the storage world is premium storage. That's who we are. And, I would say there's less properties doing what we do than on the lower or the middle end. And our typical premium that we charge is about 30% over what you would, or over what a competitor would charge, and we're able to realize those. But when you think about it, in other real estate sectors, the 30%, difference in rental rates, it creates exclusivity. In our case, that 30% really amounts to maybe a few $100s over the course of a year. So whereas take a hotel, the difference between a premium hotel and a budget hotel could be a few $100s in a given night. So yeah, we're able to recognize increased rental rates. Essentially what we are, we're storage with a lot of bells and whistles. You had mentioned the look to our facilities. We're definitely high end. We don't look like a storage facility. We look more retail than storage. And it all starts with our leasing office. They're pretty beautiful, peaked ceilings, 30-foot glass windows. We have If you walk into the leasing center, we have sample units for our typical sizes. We have a adult and children's waiting area. We even have a conference center, which sounds strange in self-storage.
You have a conference center in a storage unit? I mean,
everyone kind of has that reaction.
Who's conferencing there?
Well, you got really 30% of our tenants are commercial. You know, they're small businesses. You know, maybe a medical office, or maybe someone that has an eBay business. So yeah, 30% of our customers are commercial, and
it's just not, you know, grandma's whose attic got too big and they had to overload it. This is, you know, what are people storing in here? Who is the typical client?
Really, it runs the gamut. I mean, it could be antique furniture, it could be an automobile, it could be just regular furniture and household items, you know, and someone that's in the middle of a move. So it really runs the gamut.
Okay, so what I really want to know about is the fill rate, and you know, you need a certain occupancy rate to rent these storage units out. How do you actually figure that out when you're running the numbers to say, is this going to be something that's going to be a profitable business for me?
Sure. Typically in self-storage, and these are pretty tried and true numbers, your break-even point, and this is where you're covering your expenses as well as your debt service, usually occurs once your facility is between 60 and 70% occupied. Then once you get 60, 70% occupied, the next jump is to what we call stabilization, which is really essentially a full facility. Stabilization is 85 to 90% occupied. You never want to have a property that's 100% occupied or filled up. You always want to have, that's a glaring sign that your rates are too low. And you also want to have some availability for new customers. You never want to have to turn away customers.
So you never want to have something that's 100% full, huh?
Correct, yeah. And that's one of the first things I learned when I got into storage. So my background is not storage. My background is franchising, so I've learned a lot over the last couple of years. And at first that was puzzling to me, but when you it really makes sense.
Right, but if you just raise your rates high, enough, it probably works out to be much more profitable.
Absolutely, because you're raising those rates. Figure at 90% occupancy, you're raising those rates on 90% of your available space versus having 10%. So.
Okay, so when you're selecting a location, how do you know what a good location for this? This is the Taj Mahal of storage here. Where do you know where a good location is going to be that people are going to pay those 30% premiums?
Sure. We put a lot into site selection. It's a big part of what we offer and bring to the table to the franchisee. Essentially what we do, once we have a general area that a franchisee wants to locate, what we'll do is we've done marketing studies, so we know exactly who our customer is. So we can literally match our customer with specific zip codes. So when we go into a given area, we'll target those zip codes first, and we look for typically 2 to 7 acres of space. And once we find a possible location, what we do our own internal study and pro formas to see that it makes sense. And once before we actually close on a land deal, we do require our franchisees to hire a professional feasibility company to come in and do a study on top of ours. So there's a couple of safety valves there before we really go forward.
Explain that again. You have the franchisee actually has to hire someone to come and do a feasibility study. Who do they hire?
Absolutely. We work with a firm out of Chicago that does nothing other than feasibility studies for self-storage. And the significance there, it makes them independent. They're paid the same whether they sign off on a facility or recommend against it. And the group that we use, they're highly sought after from banks. And again, this is their expertise. They don't do any other real estate sectors. They just do self-storage.
So their whole business is just analyzing places for self-storage units, huh?
Absolutely. What we try to predict through a feasibility study is, what kind of rents can we command and how quickly can we get to stabilization, and can we get to stabilization?
Now that's a very important point to make, because you want to have a third party come in and evaluate your situation. So if you're a franchisee and you're going to go look to say, hey, is this business going to work? If you hire an outside consultant to say, you know what, it is going to work. It's not just like Amazing Spaces saying, oh yeah, but buy my franchise, pay me the royalty fees, and leave you with a lemon. So when you have this third party come in and tell you that, yeah, this is what we do, we would make this investment. That's a fantastic requirement to have. I like that a lot, Joel.
Yeah, it's about, I mean, the feasibility study typically would run about $5,000, but, the big scheme, it's a typical investment of $4 to $6 million. That's $5,000 very well spent.
No, this is very cool, Joel. Well, thank you very much. This is a great place to leave off. Really shows a lot about Amazing Spaces, and, yes, the franchisee has to pay that money, but that's, it says a lot about the standards of the company, and, you guys are doing a top quality job over there, so I appreciate you joining me today.
My pleasure.
All right, Joe, we'll link up all the information below, how they can get in touch with you guys. I appreciate you coming. Thanks a lot.
Matt, thank you.